Hello again, it's John Burroughs. I'm going to be continuing with chapter 38 of my autobiography, 7 Years to Life. This one is called AWOL, or AWOL Reception. My memory, as you can imagine, this happened about 45, 50 years ago. My memory might be a little suspect, but I hope I did a good job remembering everything that happened on that particular day. Anyway, here we go. Georgia and I were married at a Methodist church, and everyone in attendance, including the minister, were high. It was your stereotypical hippie wedding. Flowery attire and long hair was everywhere. If you were behind someone with a fro, most likely your view was obstructed, causing you to lean in one direction or the other. I was wearing a maroon velvet suit that I, along with Richard P., had ripped off from a jug dealer named Joseph, and he insisted you pronounce it Yosef. The people that knew Yosef despised him because he was a pseudo-intellectual and had fabricated a holier-than-thou image. He was one of those people that thought he was an authority on any topic you could possibly bring up for discussion. He was, as the saying goes, a legend in his own mind. How we robbed Joseph a couple of years prior to my wedding is not important to this particular story, other than the red velvet suit was something I coveted and had waited 2 years for the right occasion to wear it. In every sense of the term pimp suit, this was it. If I had the right hat, I would have been nicknamed the Vanilla Superfly. I must have looked utterly ridiculous, but as far as I was concerned, that suit made me the coolest cat that walked the earth that day. There were so many of our friends there that day, and I would like to be able to say it was a memorable ceremony. However, I do not remember our vows or who was sitting where. I was relieved when the ceremony was finally over and we were headed for the reception. It is the reception I will never forget. The reception was held in the backyard of George's parents' house. This was done for economical reasons, and though I am unable to prove it, but even though my parents were not too fond of George's parents and vice versa, I think they agreed on one thing. They had never wanted this marriage to take place, so a very private reception was ideal for their purposes. For me, it was a special day. All my friends were there, and they were happy for the both of us. No one knew at the time that George and I had married for the wrong reasons, and it took years for those reasons to become apparent, although there were subtle hints along the way. As would happen so often in those days, where a gathering of young and often confused hippies, the conversation turned to politics, oppression, and the Vietnam War that was not far from losing support from everybody, including conservatives and liberals. Most people that read these stories will remember the history of those times and the unpopularity of this ridiculous war. If you are too young to remember those times, then I would suggest that researching the events of that period will not only be enlightening but inspiring. I need to make it clear that war is a necessary evil when the circumstances justify it, and the preservation of individual freedom is at stake. The thing that will forever be etched in my memory about the reception was a conversation I had with whom I'll call G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe had joined the Army the previous year and had been notified that he was going to be shipped or stationed somewhere. I don't exactly remember where, but he was given a 3-day leave prior to his departure. As you can understand, he had to get many things in order prior to shipping out. He pulled me to the side where Georgia, Jeff S., Bob B., and Robbie A. were squatting on the grass, immersed in emotional conversation. Georgia at the time was probably more introverted than any person I had ever known. Therefore, to see her actively participating in a conversation was unusual. Of course, the subject was the Vietnam War. G.I. Joe, who was in uniform, and I sat down beside them and listened to what they were saying. Seeing G.I. Joe in his Army uniform created a lull in the conversation. G.I. Joe took this opportunity to let the others know what he had just told me. What he had failed to tell me was that this was his fourth day away, and essentially this was almost considered AWOL. G.I. Joe was one of my first friends at Aragon. He was an Italian boy with an infectious personality and a booming laugh. He loved to laugh. If you had to judge what he looked like just by the tone of his voice and his boisterous laugh, you could picture him being 6'6" tall and possibly a mob enforcer. It was actually just the opposite. He was 5'6" tall, and though he played center for the football team, keeping guys almost twice his size at bay, he was extremely admired for his kindness and sense of humor. We all sat in a tight circle that day, anxiously awaiting for what G.I. Joe would reveal next. In his words, when I joined the Army, I felt proud of myself, and it certainly helped that it made my dad swell with pride. I never considered myself a hippie, greaser, surfer, or whatever. I was just happy I had true friends like you guys. I honestly thought that defending my country was not only the honorable thing to do, but it was the right thing to do. That was a year ago when I first joined, and since then, my world has been turned upside down. It was obvious that G.I. Joe was at a crossroads and was in the clutches of an emotional and moral dilemma. He continued with his thoughts. I can't go back. I have talked to too many guys who have seen too many mutilated guys come back, lost and hopeless, and those are the guys that made it back alive. I know all of you are aware that this war and our country's goals are sketchy at best. Innocent people are being killed, needless atrocities are being committed, and anyone that I have found that has the intestinal fortitude to talk about that experience are at a complete loss as to why the war wages on. One guy said to me, it could continue forever. It is like the decision makers have all lost any sense of logic and are collectively insane. G.I. Joe was rolling now and nobody dared to interrupt him. He started to tear up but continued on. What I do know is that I will not kill innocent people, and I am not sure I could even kill in self-defense. I am probably going to return tomorrow and face the music, but I swear I will refuse to go to Vietnam. This scares me because I will have to be tried and spend some serious time in a military prison, and I do not know if I could be tried for desertion that could carry a death penalty. I could remain quiet no longer. I locked eyes with G.I. Joe and said, listen to me. I doubt there is anyone here that would not defend liberty or America. Even if they were conscientiously opposed to killing, they would find other ways to contribute to this country's defense. You are now realizing what so many soldiers realized about this war long ago. Our shores are not under attack and our sovereignty is not in jeopardy. Other than ending this war as soon as humanely possible, contributing to its continuation is the crime that is being committed. Each day, more people join the ranks of those who have become increasingly dissatisfied with those that perpetuate this ridiculousness. I had to pause for a moment to control my anger and think about the decisions I would make if I had been in G.I. Joe's shoes. It was my passion that was impossible to control. I continued my pontificating by saying, here is what I would do. First of all, I would not return now. I would continue on living my life as if I had never joined the Army. I hardly doubt that a private going AWOL is a rarity And I am also convinced that hunting you down like Richard Kimball in The Fugitive is not the best use of their time and resources. Secondly, charging you with desertion is absurd. You have not had to fight over there as of yet, so there is nobody to desert or run away from. If you remain AWOL, that is all they can charge you with. If you turn yourself in now and refuse to go to Vietnam, they definitely could charge you with insubordination. I rarely say the word guarantee, but in this case, I guarantee they will not catch you even if they decide to look for you. Eluding them would be child's play. I watched G.I. Joe very closely as he was processing my recommendation. Right before he could utter a response, I closed with the following arguments. I know that you do not want to spend the rest of your life worrying about the ramifications would be if you were discovered. Please know this. The war is going to end very soon due to public outcry, and when it does, stay underground a month or so longer until the guilt sinks in on those who are known for extending this blight on U.S. history. There will be time to surrender to the appropriate personnel. I believe firmly that there will not be a prison sentence. However, in order to save face, you will be dishonorably discharged. I think by doing this, you will sustain the least damage. The only other thing I have left to suggest is that when you defend yourself, make it clear that it is an unjust war that led to the discovery of who you truly are. A conscientious objector.